Today's recipe inspiration came from our very own Ross Caruso. He gave me some pickled jalapenos picked straight from his garden, and they were so good, I built an entire recipe around them. Check out this week's Brittany's Bites. Well, today is National Comfort Food Day. I mean, that's a pretty great day, right? So this is sort of one of my comfort food recipes, basically because it's a go-to. It's so easy to make, and you can basically use up what you still have in your fridge and your pantry and mix and match the ingredients as you'd like. But this dish is actually a little bit inspired by our very own Ross Caruso. Take a look at this little jar of pickled jalapenos. They came directly from his garden. He grew them and he pickled them himself, and then he was nice enough to give me a sample. They're so amazing. I tasted them and I said, okay, I have to build a recipe entirely around this jar of jalapenos, just using them. So here we go with Southwestern quinoa. So I love quinoa because you could dress it up however you'd like. You can go with an Asian theme. In this case, I'm going with Southwestern. And so here is how I made it. We're gonna put in about a quarter of a red onion, maybe a half if you have a smaller one. I'm gonna save a little bit for the garnish. So I'm gonna put some in here. Got them all nice and diced up. All right, saving a few there. And then along with that, I have about a half of a jalapeno diced very small, definitely remove the seeds and the ribs, and then almost an entire yellow bell pepper. I love red bell peppers. I have one right here, but I already had sliced up a little bit of this one. So again, use what you have on hand. I'm gonna add that in as well. And then we want that to just soften up a little bit. Here I have quinoa, and you can just do this according to package directions. So the basic recipe is 1 cup of quinoa, and it comes very, very tiny, these little tiny balls of quinoa, and you're gonna put it in a mesh strainer and definitely rinse it off. If you wanna dress it up a little bit and pump up the flavor, this is what I did. I actually cooked it in 2 cups of stock, of vegetable stock. You can use beef stock, you can use chicken stock, probably is a great alternative. Low sodium, if you wanna keep the sodium down, that's what I did in this case. And then also, just to pump up the flavor a little bit, I'm gonna give this a little zhuzh over here. I sprinkled in some cumin because I love cumin, and some coriander too. And then also, I took some tomato paste. So great to have these to keep in the fridge, right? And I just did a couple of little squirts. I think it's probably about 2 teaspoons, but you can do that all to taste as well. So I can hear this going over here. This is great. Want to get it cooked out a little bit more, and then I'm going to tell you about some of the other things I'm going to add. So again, sticking with the Southwestern theme, we've got peppers and onions in here. I've got some black beans. I took just 1 can, I think it's about 15 ounces of black beans. I rinsed and drained them. You definitely want to rinse off all the sort of goop, and I do no salt added, and then no salt added corn here. So those are going to be the basics for the actual quinoa dish, and then you can just go wild when it comes to your toppings. And again, that's where Ross's jalapenos come in. They're so good. And by the way, I asked him to give me some more so that I could do this recipe, and then he's gonna have his guest pickling recipe. So if you want Ross's recipe for pickled jalapenos, it's very easy to follow. I'm going to include that in this recipe online as well, so look for it there. And then I'm gonna have some cheese and some lime, and you could do some crema. And this actually, the salsa is gonna go in here as well to cook down because I want to really pump up the flavor. Okay, that's cooked down enough, my peppers and onions there, at least for the sake of TV, right? So we're gonna add our other ingredients now. To that, I'm gonna add that can of black beans, again, that I have drained and rinsed. I'm gonna eyeball the corn here. I might add some later. Now see, of course, now that I'm adding this corn, I realize I wish I had done a red pepper or an orange pepper just to give it a little bit more color. Oh well. I think right now I am gonna go ahead and add a little bit of that salsa because I want some of the flavors to come together. So, put in the salsa. You can use, again, whatever you have on hand, whatever your favorite salsa is. This is just what I happen to have, frankly, because it was on sale at the grocery store. Okay, so we've got our mixture bubbling up a little bit, so it's definitely started to cook together. So now for our final step is just adding the quinoa. So again, we just cook this according to package instructions. You can do it with water, or you can do it with stock or broth. Works just fine either way. It's all nice and fluffy. Now we just mix it together. And once you do get it mixed together, you probably want to let it cook just a couple of minutes longer so that everything comes together and the quinoa can absorb some of those flavors and that liquid. And this is another time where this is when you eyeball it. You want to add a little hot sauce, you want to give it a little taste. I can tell that I probably want to add a little bit more salsa because I think it's still a little too dry for how I would prefer it. But as you can see, it's coming together and looking great with all of those colors. You can see the black beans and the peppers, and every now and then a little bit of the green. Those are your jalapenos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more salsa to this and let it cook for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll finish it off. Okay, the quinoa is done. It all came together. It smells great. It looks great. So we're gonna scoop into a bowl here and then top it off. And this is when you can get very creative, however you would like to do it. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna take a little bit of cotija cheese here. Sprinkle that on top. Then let's see, we'll do a couple of red onion, which I love. Maybe a little scoop of sour cream. And then a squeeze of lime. Love that. There we go. And then, of course, the piece de resistance, right? We've got to do Ross's jalapenos. They're so tiny and cute as well, and they are so, so good. Frankly, they're a little bit addictive, so putting a lot on there, but I'm gonna try to preserve these because I wanna make them last as long as possible. But isn't this great? We have here for our comfort food, this is my comfort food all the way, Southwestern Quinoa with Ross's jalapenos. Cheers. Well, if you have a recipe you'd like to share, maybe share some jalapenos from your own garden like Ross did, or maybe you have an idea for a future segment, you can text us at 614-460-3345 or find me on social media. I got to tell you, Ross is great in the garden, and those pickled jalapenos are amazing. He was filling in with me one morning, and he said, "Do you like spicy food?" I said, "I love it. Give me all the spice." So he said, "All right." He basically was using me as his guinea pig because he didn't know how spicy they had turned out. So he said, "You know, give me on a scale of 1 to 10 how much they are." And I said, "Oh, it's only about a 6." And he goes, "Okay, so 8 for normal people."
Right. Oh, wow. Well,